Okay, so our next panel is Embracing the Modern Workplace Reality. We have 4 wonderful panelists, and we have an incredible moderator. She's the principal and founder of Nakanagis, Inc. Let's have a warm welcome for Carrie, Calder, the moderator, and panelists. Thank you, panelists.
So anin boju Carrie Calder Nadishnakaz bingwing Niashi Anishnamik Nadoji Ganu Nadodum. So I'm Carrie Calder. My community is Sandpoint First Nation, and my family is Golden Eagle Clan. And if my mom happens to be watching, because it's on live stream, I might not have pronounced that correctly, but I continue to try. So, hi, Mom. So I'm the owner and founder of Nakanagis Consulting, which is an Indigenous, 100% Indigenous-owned management consulting firm that provides strategic tailored solutions to companies, organizations, businesses across Canada. And I am very pleased to be joined by this rock star of a panel this morning to be able to talk about embracing some of the modern day workplace reality challenges and best practices for attracting and retaining top Indigenous talent in the workplace. So I also wanted to thank the Elder Verna McGregor, for the wonderful opening and setting the stage for us yesterday. And of course to our other panelists that started us off in this conversation today. Because I've heard some personal stories that people have been sharing, I wanted to mention that Nakanagis is my grandmother's name, my kokum's name, Christine Nakanagis, who joined the spirit world before I was born. And so for me, it's a real honor to be able to have her in my everyday conversations, and it's a really proud part of what I do. And it was a really important piece for me to also ensure that when working with non-Indigenous clients and also within the Indigenous community, that there was a signal that that this work was embedded in the Indigenous lens. So with that, when we come together, very excited to be talking about how these panelists, we have Jody Anderson, the Strategy and Partnership Advisor with the First Nations Finance Authority, Jennifer Tetrault with the First Nations Financial Management Board as their Senior Human Resource Manager, and Bobbie, Racette, the Chief Executive Officer of Virtual Gurus. So before we get into the panel, I would like to invite each of you to do an introduction and share a little bit about your role and yourself, and say hello to the wonderful crowd today. So Jody.
Can you hear me at the back? Ani Bonjour, Jody Anderson, Indigenous, Kuchiching Ndojba, Ottawa Nda. I am originally from Treaty 3, Northwestern Ontario. However, I live, work, and play here on the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin peoples. So it's a pleasure and an honor for me to be able to raise my family here on Algonquin territory. I am the Strategy and Partnerships Advisor for the First Nations Finance Authority. And I went to school not too far from here in Peterborough, Ontario. My background is business administration, and my major was in human resource management. And so I'll tell you some stories as we get along and start moving into the questions. But I started my career in big tech and kind of learned and continued my journey on from there. But I will pass the baton over to Jennifer.
All right. Thank you, Jody. So my name is Jennifer Tetrault, and I'm the Senior HR Manager at First Nations Financial Management Board, or FNFMB. I've been with the FNFMB for about 4.5 years now. So we work with First Nations across Canada to help put in place good governance and financial practices. When I first started with FNFMB 4.5 years ago, there was 52 employees. We're now at about 125 and continuing to grow. I grew from a team of just me to now we have 6 on my team. So we've definitely put in a lot of different practices and changed a lot. I've been working in human resources for about 14 years now, and I have to say that this is the most passionate employees that I have ever worked with. So thank you.
That's amazing. Hi, everyone. I'm Bobbie, Racette, founder and CEO of Virtual Gurus. I started Virtual Gurus about 6 years ago because nobody would hire me. I was struggling finding work. I kept being told no. And so I actually started it to create a job for myself, not knowing that it would be as big as it is now. And so now Virtual Gurus is known to be the largest talent platform in North America that provides work to underserved communities. And we do this by hiring people through the platform, skilling them up, and then leveraging AI to match them with businesses and entrepreneurs as their back office support. Right now we have close to 1,100 that are in the system working, and we are now scaling into national waters. We're over in the US and we're going across to the UK here in June, and we're hoping to go global.
Wonderful, that's great. Thank you, yes, absolutely. I was sharing with Bobbie this morning that, an important part of being a small Indigenous-owned business is also recruiting and retaining talent here, and we rely on Virtual Gurus for our company, and definitely someone that you want to talk to for incorporating Virtual Gurus into your HR management strategies for sure. Just a little bit of a tech note. I don't think we're getting any volume out of the speaker here, so there's a bit of an echo. And also just to all of the participants here, we are looking to do a bit of a Q&A throughout the panel. So if you have questions, jot them down now because we're not going to save them for the end. We're going to check in throughout the morning. So please get ready to be on the mic. So with no further ado here, let's get into some of the questions that we've set up for our panelists. We know that it is a competitive market. We do want to talk about some of the strategies, some of your experience with what has worked. It's important to hear about the challenges, but really just giving some examples and scenarios of key takeaways that everybody is wanting to also benefit from. So let's start with, given the resource disparity that can exist between Indigenous organizations and large corporations, what specific challenges have you encountered with attracting Indigenous talent? So, Bobbie, I think we're going to start with you. What's worked and what have been some of the challenges that you've faced?
So with Virtual Gurus, we have two sides. I guess we're a two-sided platform, but we have our full operations department, which is downtown Calgary. We have 20,000 square foot office space. We have a ton of employees, but we run everything out of there. Our customer service, to our HR team, to our marketing and our finance, and everything from sales. And then on the other side, we have all of the talent that we hire in the platform that works with the businesses through the platform, and those are contractors that work in there. One of the hardest things for me is also making sure that we're keeping the culture from the top down, meaning to all the people that are in the platform. The one thing that I knew I did not want was I didn't want to build another Upwork or a Fiverr or anything like that. I wanted to build something where the culture stayed, which meant our impact is we bring in folks from marginalized communities. We bring in folks that have been told no, like me. So we have folks that have maybe transitioned to genders who can't find work being who they are. We have folks that are on Indigenous communities who want to stay in their communities and work and be with their children. And so keeping that culture all across and making sure that we are also making sure that we're keeping the culture across the fact that there are so many different kinds of people working in our platform. We have a diverse platform. So a few of the things that we struggled with was making sure that the folks that are coming from the Indigenous communities are somewhat treated different than the folks that are not. And that's because maybe they didn't have the skills, maybe they are just learning, they're trying to learn, and we have to put a little bit more work into those folks, and we have to do a little bit more training, hands-on, and even educational programs for them so that they can learn how to be a virtual assistant through the platform and work independently from home, which not a lot of people have that discipline to do so. So we were able to launch out a program that we called the Canoe program, and it was set off with our other program called the TP program, and this was where we taught our Indigenous folks how to treat clients as if they were building their TP. And this really helped a lot with the internal clients. We've kind of dropped the program for now, just because we're kind of stretched thin, but keeping up with that growth and being able to do that while scaling as high as we are has been proven to be difficult.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fair. Thanks for that specific example. Jennifer, anything you'd like to add there?
Yeah, I think what I'd like to add is probably about a third of our employees have finance backgrounds, and so we're competing with those large corporations, the big names out there. And so it's really can be a struggle sometimes getting our name out there. A lot of people haven't heard about FNB, and so when students are coming out of that finance background or they're looking for things, they're not necessarily looking for the smaller organizations. We also have a lot of the larger corporations that they're trying to create more of a diverse staff as well, right? So we're competing for them, for our Indigenous candidates as well. And so I think it's just really important that we're getting our name out there. We've got relationships with CPA BC. Our Vancouver office is now a pre-approved training office, and so we're able to start training the CPA students and bring them in. And so I think it's just really the struggle is making sure that we're getting heard as well and coming up with ways to engage with those who are interested in the smaller companies rather than just all the big corporations.
Great examples. Thank you. Jody.
Sure, thanks, Carrie. I think one of the things that we're really seeing is, particularly since TRC report was released, you're seeing non-Indigenous and larger corporations, corporate Canada, start to embrace TRC call to action number 92. And so we see a lot of corporations wanting to build up their Indigenous employee base. But my question is always, why are you doing this? So this is not, TRC call to action number 92 is not to tick a box. There's other reasons that align better with our values of why that's important. And there's more behind why that call to action actually exists. So we're working with organizations where Indigenous values is what we live and breathe on a daily basis. We want to promote that these values are instilled into corporate Canada's cultural environment as well. And I think that, like Jennifer said, you're competing. If I'm a First Nation, a lot of the funding that comes to me is based through funding agreements that I have with Canada. We all know that, it only scratches the tip of the iceberg in terms of where we can go and what we can offer candidates for salary ranges. And I can't compete with the large corporations. So if I'm coming out of school and I have an offer on the table from a First Nation and they're offering me maybe $75,000, but then I get an offer from a bank or somewhere else in corporate Canada and they can double that, that's very difficult for our nations to compete with. And so there's a disparity there and there's scarcity that exists simply even at the salary. And if you look at the cost of just living today, I can guarantee you that the majority of people are going to go with the larger salary base. So it becomes really, really difficult to compete with these larger corporations. I mentioned earlier that when I graduated school, I was fortunate enough to be hired and come to Ottawa in the tech boom. Who here remembers the tech boom? Good times. Yeah, it was good times. And we couldn't hire fast enough. We were giving out signing bonuses. We were hiring hundreds of people. We were putting our logos on the side of trains. And really there was, money was not an option because you were competing with 7 other tech firms at the time. And so it was fun and it was exciting, but it was a very, very competitive market. And then 2001, 2002, the bubble burst. How many people remember that? Yeah. And so all that excitement went away, and in a span of 1 year, we went from hiring hundreds of people to laying off hundreds of people. And that was a really, really difficult thing, particularly as a young person coming out of school, having to sit down with hundreds of people saying, as of today, you're being let go. And I realized really quickly, these types of things, that was very difficult for me to do. And that certainly wasn't filling my bucket. So it really depends on what fills your bucket and who you're hiring. What is their motivation? Because for some people, you become a number in a big corporation. And some people are okay with that. There's more opportunities. There's more room for movement. But for some of us, that gratification and the ability to fill your bucket and see the impact in our nations, in your community, that was a big, big difference for me. And I decided very young in my career that I would never, once I went and started working for community and serving community, that I was going to be on this path for the rest of my life, because I felt like I was adding value and I could see the impact that it made very quickly.
What a great example. I love hearing about the value. It's the value that you can connect as an Indigenous organization to Indigenous candidates, to employees. Thank you. And hearing the partnerships, if you're a smaller organization, to ensure that your partnerships are aligned so that people are able to see that connection. And I really appreciated that specific training to employment, the example of the TP program that you had. I think along those lines, getting to attracting and retaining Indigenous talent and how that aligns with organizational capacity building and building capacity within communities generally. And maybe, Jody, I'll start with you. Because we just heard about Canada's top 100 employers that they've named the First Nations Finance Authority in BC in the top 40. So that's a recent achievement. That's amazing. So let's maybe talk there for a moment about attracting and retaining Indigenous talent, and then we'll move along to the rest of the panel. And this is a question that I'm also going to pose to the audience. So now is the time to have an example ready. Jody.
Sure, thanks, Carrie. Yes, really very proud of the FNFA and that we were recognized as a top employer. I think it speaks well to part of our recruitment strategy as well. And again, going back to value, it's about valuing employees and having employees feel valued. And I know that's, if you do an employment engagement survey or talk to your employees and ask or look at exit strategies, why do people leave? Oftentimes it's because they don't feel valued, right? So how do you create that value? How do you enhance that value? And we're not perfect either. I mean, we've made our errors and learned a lot of things throughout this journey, but inviting people to work for us. We have to remember when we're recruiting that we're just not looking for you. It's important that we are a good fit for who wants to work here. So if we're sitting across from in an interview and we're sitting across from you and we're asking you, why do you feel or how do you feel that you can add value to the FNFA? We would be naive to think that we're not being evaluated when the tables are turned. Are we a good fit for you? Because people react and they see value in different ways. So as an Indigenous organizations or a First Nations organization, it's important that we recognize culture and how people practice culture in the East is different than how they practice culture in the West. Do we give space to attend cultural ceremonies? Yes, that's important. We want to revitalize our culture. So it's important that we're not doing things to limit cultural engagement. We have generous time off. We have RSP or RESP or TFSA matching programs. We want to create wealth within our employees. We embrace training, professional development, volunteering, being a part of the community, not just as individuals, but as an organization, so we can all participate. We celebrate things that are important to our employees. So we have to make sure that that's a part of the fabric of our organization as well, to let employees know that what matters to you matters to us. And so I think that part of that is a step in the right direction, and understanding what's important to millennials is very different than what's important to Gen X or some of our other generations. We are coming from a point in time where, my father worked at a company for 35 years. Very rarely is that the case now. People are mobile, they're transient, they move around. How many people here have a colleague or an acquaintance that they knew from another organization? Nobody? Yes, exactly. So you might have worked for FNFA today, but you may be working for NACCA tomorrow. But you're still the same person. So you still see the same faces, but sometimes our titles change or our organizations change. So part of that is when we're hiring people, our commitment to employees is we want to make you even better than a better employee than what you came in the door as, because that's part of our branding too. We want to be known for creating and cultivating really great employees.
Wonderful example. Yes, so much there. Jennifer?
Great, thank you. I definitely think that, the life cycle of an employee, it starts with that recruitment. It's so important in how you're recruiting them and making sure that they're, both a match for you as an organization as well as the position, but then as Jody said, that you are also a match for them. When we're doing recruiting, we really look for employees that have those shared values. When you're sitting in an interview, you can feel if they're aligning with your values, or you see that passion that they have, and that's really what we try to look for. We also do Big 5 personality assessments as part of our onboarding and of recruitment process. And so with these assessments, it allows us to see if these employees, if they really align with the team, as well as the organizations, if there are certain areas that might be energizing for them, how can we make sure that they're getting that in the role? If there's areas that are draining, who else on the team can kind of take something? So we really try to use those, and we continue to use them through the whole cycle of their employment with us. And we do different team assessments and make sure that, they continue to grow as a team together. One of the things that we feel that COVID-19 really allowed us to do was actually two things. First, it allowed us to welcome remote working or hybrid working. Before that, our employees had to work within one of our 4 offices. This allowed us to really expand our recruitment and allowed employees to stay in their community and not have to relocate to the large offices. The second thing that it really allowed us to do was talk about well-being and mental health. And so we've really tried to make sure that our employees feel from day one that they have support from us. Their work is just a part of their day. They have a whole life outside of work. And so we want to make sure that they have support. We have a health and well-being committee. We have introduced a lot of different policies to make sure that they have the support and that they feel supported. And actually, it's Mental Health Week right now, so we have emails going out every morning with activities for the whole week, as well as resources. So I think it's just making sure that they feel that they're included, they're cared about, and it's really important that it's top down. We see this through our board. They have stressed all through COVID and continuing that they don't want to see anyone burnt out. They want to make sure that everyone has that support and the time off that they need. And you see that in our senior leadership team, and we cascade that down to all of our employees.
Wonderful, thank you. Bobbie?
I can take it back a little bit to being a founder. How many founders are in the room? Like, they founded your quite a bit. That's good. So, I mean, one of the things as a founder that when I built this company, I really struggled with creating a company that was going to be like all of the other corporate companies, that the way they treated me wasn't good for me. You know, and I wanted to be different, and I strived to be different. I wanted to be the place that people would want to come and work and want to be a part of it. So values and our mission and everything is super important to us, but the number one thing as a founder and the CEO of the company that I do is I treat every single employee like they're a human. I walk around, I talk to them every day, I say hi, I take pictures with them, I go up the elevator and I'm going to get coffee and one of the employees is in the elevator, I'm grabbing them coffee, we have parties for them, we have all this stuff where it's just they realize that they're human like me. I don't shy away from them. In fact, I think some of them are watching right now on the lives right now. And it's part of the number one thing is if everybody is treated as human, they're gonna do more work for you. So a couple of the things that we're implementing is, it's called Creative Days or Joy Days. We're gonna give everybody once a quarter where they get to take a day and they can go and they have to do something. It has to just be something creative. Bring joy in your life and then post about it in our Slack channels and talk about it. And just, if it even just brings you joy, like taking your dog for a walk or, being creative, going and painting a tree or something, enjoy it, be creative, get your mind off of work. Our values right now is one of our biggest things. What we did was we picked 26 employees and they volunteered. And so we created a thing called Value Gurus. And so all of them came, we had workshops every week, and we had to build out the workshops and build out the values. So we let the employees be a part of actually building our values and our mission and vision. And this has gone a long way because some of our values, they've created with me in the room, and then I exited myself for the rest of the workshops. And at the end, they presented to me what it was. And I can't say how proud I was of that moment, of understanding that they were setting the future of virtual gurus based on what I felt was important. And some of those values are that we're a collaborative environment, that we believe in ideas over hierarchy. You cannot be afraid, and if you're creating a culture where people are afraid to come and with an idea, then you're not creating a really good environment for them. You want that, because the next golden nugget could be in the employee that has been, overlooked. And so this is something that we create there at Virtual Gurus. We really try to make it so that people want to be there and they want to own it. They want to be an owner of the company. And this has really helped with the culture, especially on cultural days. So, Orange Shirt Day, some of our Indigenous ladies put on their ribbon skirts and did a cultural day and explained how that worked to the entire team. Everybody sat there and listened and was a part of it. I guess my number one thing is give them a voice, and they'll want to work there.
That's so great. And from that founder perspective, and for all the people who are in this room, not only the founders, but if you're leading, you're the CEO, you're the ED, you're a decision maker of a manager, my message is be like Bobbie. I really like that specific things, like that, just having people feel that connectedness and contributing to the overall value. Those are very great examples. Before I check back in at the panel, I want to look across the room to see if we can hear some examples. We have so much expertise here, and I'm sure everybody's just like, where's the mic? There's two people that are walking around with the mic, and I would like to hear an example of how you have strategies in place or ideas or just the things that you do differently that help retain, include, value your staff, so and your team. Everyone's scrolling through their phone, not making eye contact with me.
Okay, raise those paws. Let's go. We got a runner in the back over there. Over
yes,
here,
they all
sir.
forgot that Stan's in the room, and he is not going. I see two hands up, actually.
Where's the second one?
Three, perfect.
Okay,
There's
great.
Jerry, front table, and back table there. Great.
Right here. Hello, everyone. Ani, bonjour. So I'm with Canada Post, and I've had some great leadership and some great mentors. And one of the ways that I continue to practice today in any of the areas of the organization that I lead is applying the Ford concept. So a lot to what Bobbie was saying is, what is their family, what is their occupation, what is their recreation, and what are their dreams? Knowing each and every one of those concepts for every one of your employees will come back to you tenfold. And they will come to work and they will embrace you, and you work together as a unit. And there are no titles. I don't go to anyone and say, this is my boss or this is my employee. I always do an introduction of this is my colleague, especially if I'm out and about and I'm shopping and I see, some of my colleagues. I won't say, they won't say this is my boss. I don't like being introduced that way. This is my colleague. It's respect. We work together. We just have different positions in the company. That I feel really resonates. One of the key focuses that I work on now, part of the Northern and Indigenous strategy, is with my colleagues that are not Indigenous, is I do word of the day. They really embrace that. I get my drum, I sing, and we do the alphabet together. Little things like that I find is all a part of inclusion. So that's just some of the things that I do, Bobbie, that I can resonate with. So thank you.
I love that. I do want to that gave me a major idea. Something that I've been really, really wanting to implement, and we're going to, so I hope you all don't mind, but I'm going to swear for just 1 second. But I really want to implement Fuck Up Fridays, because I think you should embrace failure. You should embrace during the week with your employees when you've made a mistake, and embrace it and celebrate and scream and hoot and holler and drum and dance, because you know what? We're all going to fail. We're all going to make mistakes. If we embrace those mistakes, then it's letting them not feel fear that they've created and that they've made a mistake. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Oh my goodness, if anybody from Nakanagis is watching, sorry about our filing Fridays. But anyway, there were 2 other examples, I think, in the room. Did you still want to share? Yeah, we see one at the front here.
One of the things I did when I was running my business, and then I did a stint of taking care of the organization that I work for right now, we had a whole bunch of new people in the office, and I sat them all down, and I said, okay, so this is how it's going to work. We're an office full of women, and all us women in here know how kind of catty and drama it gets a little bit. And I said, I have a completely open door policy. So if you have a problem, you'll come to me, and I'll bring that other person in, and we'll talk about it. It's a discussion. It's not a vent session. It's not the he said, she said, all of that stuff. I don't want that. I don't want that drama. So come to me. We'll discuss it like rational human beings. And every morning for a week, I brought in muffins, and we sat down, and we got to know each other, and we did some really amazing games. But it was that fostering of that ability to come in and feel trust with me, because I was the new leader of this organization for that temporary period, but I needed them to trust me, to be comfortable with me. So I really encourage anybody who's looking to hire to have an open door policy and actually mean it. Like, don't shut your doors. Ever, because your employees need to come to you. When I ran my business, it was the same way. I had an open door policy, and I was very much like Bobbie said. My employees were humans. They're not just a number. I believe that your employees are your number one customer. They will make your business succeed, and they will tank it. So you treat them well, and you treat them just like you would treat a friend.
Great examples of removing that hierarchy, doing things differently than perhaps we're just, really, in this colonized world, we're talking about decolonizing processes. So really appreciate those examples. I see we have a fan favorite at the front. Jerry Lanouette has the mic.
Hi. So as you know, I've headed up a number of First Nations nonprofit organizations. And one of the ones that I was heavily involved with was the First Nations Information Governance Center. So we had senior managers right down to data analysts that we had to go out and do presentations to a number of government funders, communities, tribal councils, and so on. But I found one thing that lacked was the self-confidence and the esteem that a lot of our team members didn't have. So what I instituted, and it's still ongoing apparently since I've left there, is we had a rotating chair for our weekly meetings, staff meetings. And so each person would be the chair for that week. They would develop the agenda according to what the minutes said from the previous week and so on. And the other thing was one manager had to do a presentation, 5-minute presentation to the rest of the staff on what they were doing. and they had to use PowerPoint or any other type of multimedia approach. And over time, like I would say, like not even 6 months, you could see the difference in the people's personalities within the organization, where they weren't so shy anymore. A lot of us are introverts. You know, sometimes we put on that fake extrovert persona, but a lot of us are introverts, so I found that made a great difference.
Yeah, love hearing that embeddedness. Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, I love that idea about the rotating chair. I know my culture people are watching. I'm going to do that.
Noted. Yeah, that's great. Okay, sorry, we did have one more question. Did you want, or one more comment? Did you want to add your comment in the back? No? Okay. We will be coming back to the audience in a moment. So if there's any more comments from the panel before we go to, okay. So I wanted to change gears a bit and talk a bit about the virtual and hybrid working environment. We had specific questions about it, but it's already come up. So I think where I'd like to kind of turn things to is, it's no longer a new way of doing business. This is the way that we operate. So how about some examples when we're thinking about having folks feel included and connected? How are we connecting in the virtual world, and how are we making those and strengthening those connections? So I'll leave it open to whoever would like to start.
Sure. I think this is a silver lining that COVID really brought and was a catalyst for, was virtual workspaces. So I've been working from home now for about 5 years, and prior to COVID, there were some days I thought, does anybody know I'm out here? And we were still picking up the phone and doing a lot of meetings in person. But throughout COVID, we really started to use Teams, we really started to use Zoom, and that has continued post-COVID as well. But now, when I want to talk to a colleague in Quebec, or if I want to talk to a colleague in British Columbia or the Yukon and just check in with them, I just click that button on Teams, and we can have that face-to-face interaction, and we can have, I can see, your reaction to things and have those discussions just like we would in person. I also am the mother of 2 very active boys, and having the flexibility to work from home has really done well and made our family much more cohesive. I don't feel like I'm spending 2 hours in traffic every day. I can, if my little one gets sick, I'm 5 minutes from the school. I can go and take out chicken out of the freezer, or whatever happens to be. I can find that balance a lot easier. So for me, having that hybrid option is fantastic. Having that work from home flexibility really works for me, particularly as a parent, that I can service both my family and my workspace. We also share office space, where if we have to meet with communities, we can go in and we can have a physical office. So there's that piece too, but I will tell you, it's pros and cons. Do I like sitting in traffic every morning? Absolutely not. Do I like sitting in traffic for an hour after my day? Absolutely not. But I will tell you that it also helps me decompress from the day, having that drive home, which sometimes I miss because I go from clicking leave a meeting to, okay, get your shoes on and let's get going right now. I don't have that downtime. Any parents in the room that can relate to that, I would really appreciate that. So I think that having that flexibility, I know with the government too, and it's a hot button. I was hearing on the news this morning about having to go to work and be physically in the office 2 to 3 times a week. So do you have to be there 100% of the time to do your job effectively? I would argue no. But it depends the role that you're in. If you're servicing people, yes, you need to be seen. Do you need to tangibly touch things for your job? Are you a tech person? Then, you have to find the pros and cons in your workplace and your role.
Absolutely. Jennifer, anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'd like to just add, so we also have the hybrid agreements and the remote work, which is, wonderful. I'm fortunate enough to be able to work from home as well. But we put a lot of priority on making sure that those who are alone don't feel alone. And so when we're having our meetings, we use Teams. We really encourage that the cameras are on. We want them to be engaged. We have all staff meetings about every 6 weeks. And so all staff across Canada are invited to it. We invite staff to be part of the opening, start the meetings off in a good way, whether they are drumming, singing, sharing a story or a prayer. So we really try to make them interactive. And recently we're just also adding to make sure that we've got time where staff can ask the SLT, any questions, that we always leave time, doesn't matter what's on the agenda, for questions, and just try to get them engaged and involved.
Great. Yes, and Bobbie.
So, we're a virtual company, but obviously having two sides. Our employees side, we were working full-time in the office when the pandemic hit. When the pandemic hit, all of the people that were getting laid off were administrative people. But then all those people that were laying them off were coming to us saying, we need administrative support. So we were picking up all the laid off folks, bringing them into our system, and then recycling them back out to the same businesses that were laying them off. And so because we were doing that, we were growing about 512% year-over growth. It was insane, and all of us had to go home and work, and we were locked down. And right the Christmas before everybody went, the whole entire company got COVID together. And so we sent everybody home again. And it was so hard because we were scaling so fast. We had a lot of people that lived on their own. We had a lot of single moms. We had a lot of that. And it was something where we had to realize, what are we going to do to make sure we're keeping with the mental health? We're keeping up with this scale, because the mental health would have been a little bit easier to handle and work with. But when you're scaling as fast as we are scaling at that time, everybody is working. You're just like cats on keyboard, just going all day long. And it was really difficult to keep up with that. Now, after the pandemic, we actually brought everybody back in for a few reasons, but mainly because we needed to try to tie the company together again. We needed to bring that team cohesiveness back. And we really needed to be able to scale, because as a startup that is scaling that fast, things can fall apart really fast. Like, you're literally throwing spaghetti at the wall, and if it sticks, it's great. If it doesn't, you're like, okay, let's try something else. And we had to get the team going through that at the same time with us. So for us, now we're hybrid. So we're 3 days in the office, 2 days at home, 3 days at home, 2 days in the office. We just implemented it. And then one Wednesday every 2 weeks, we bring the entire company in. And then every 2 weeks, I send out a CEO report. We have our all hands as well, our quarterly all hands. And then we have fun times. So on Fridays, we shut down and turn on Jackbox TV, and we all play video games. And then we just have fun times at the office where we're showing them that we're there for them and we're supporting them. We're going into the next stage of scale, and one of the things we're actually thinking of implementing is getting some mental health support through some, like an online, like Better Health and whatnot, to support our leaders. Because when you're going through that high scale, the leaders are the ones that struggle with it. And that's something that we're learning, is how do we make sure we're taking care of them while we scale? Because just like everybody else, we've had to do layoffs. We've had to take the team down a little bit. And, we've lost, I think it was 17% of our workforce. And now we're still scaling, but now a lot of those roles have doubled up. So the ultimate goal for me is, how do we make sure we're staying top of mind with them and taking care of them first and foremost?
Something that I forgot to mention, we talked a little bit about virtual and hybrid options, but we didn't really touch on technology. So as a result of the pandemic and COVID, we really had to pivot and look at our policies in a very different way, because we had a lot of people working from home. We had a lot of equipment that was being deployed into individual homes. And how do you create inventory for that? Something that technology has really had to come into play is really around information management. Because, and I mentioned earlier that we don't see people working at the same roles or in the same roles for 20, 30 years anymore. There's a risk. So it's a risk management piece about losing corporate knowledge. And so how do you start to document and retain that corporate knowledge? So the inclusion of technology really becomes important in how you're managing and keeping continuity, business continuity among your organization. So we had single point dependencies. We're small but mighty. So we only have maybe 25 employees. And so if we know the average shelf life of an employee before they want to have a new chapter in their life is maybe 5 to 6 years, we have to be prepared in advance so that we're not shocked when that person says, I've decided to move on, I've decided to start my own company. So how do you retain that corporate knowledge and have maybe cross training internally, ensuring that as a small organization that risk is mitigated as best as possible?
Great, thank you for adding that, and thanks for the examples about staying connected in the virtual world. Part of the discussion today in this panel is about recruitment and it's about retaining, but it's also looking to employers about meeting equity, diversity, and inclusion. How can organizations ensure that they're creating inclusive work environments that are fostering the success of Indigenous talent? And then what are the key elements of that have effective equity, diversity, and inclusion strategies that we should be talking about? And Jennifer, I'm going to start with you.
Sure. I think that you have to make that commitment. You have to actually either put together a group or a plan so that you know that this is what you're going to do. So about 2 years ago, FNB joined the CFA Institute, the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Code, and so this code is championing making systemic changes. And so we had signed off on this, and it really held us accountable. From there, we created a diversity, equity, inclusion committee. We have, on my team, I have a cultural and learning specialist. We also have a social and cultural committee. And so we all have these different parts where we make sure that we're following through with what we've committed, and having it put into your employees' hands, it gives them that voice. And especially, because we're across Canada, as it was mentioned earlier, Jody said, you're different from the east to the west, the north and south. And so it's making sure that you're including everybody in that. We also make sure that we do quarterly engagement surveys, and so that we're really listening to our employees. We're gathering that feedback. They're all anonymous, but we take that feedback, we share it with both the board and our employees, and we try to pick, okay, where can we make changes, just so that we continue to grow. We have a working group on our policies, and so during this next year, they'll be going through all of our policies, and we'll make sure the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee is also working with them to make sure that we're holding up to those commitments that we've made.
That's great. Bobbie, did you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, we just not about 2 years ago, we had to actually hire a people and culture department. The thing about in our industry, in the tech industry, when you're scaling so fast, is culture can run away from you faster than you know it. Once there's a little bit of toxicity in the company, it's like a poison that you can never get rid of, and it takes a long time to get rid of it. And as the founder, I found this very almost like heartbreaking, because I don't like seeing that stuff, and I don't know how to handle that, and it hurts, because it's like my baby that I've worked the last 6-7 years of my life creating. And so we realized it was time to bring in people and culture. So in this last 2 years, we were able to really clean up that side of it, really focus on it, build out the values, as I've said earlier. And now we're able to hold the team accountable to the values and to equity, diversity, inclusion. We actually have JEDI in ours for justice, equity, diversity, inclusion. And we really try to walk that talk, and we really try to make people feel safe and understand why they can feel safe. And if they don't feel safe, come to us. And we do the same as we have anonymous surveys. We have an open door policy, especially with our people and culture department. And sometimes I walk by her office and there's a lineup sitting on a couch outside waiting to get in. And we joke around and say, you're like camp counselor, but hey, we need it. And sometimes it's just people that just need to talk. They've had a bad day at home. Somebody in the elevator frustrated them, or the person beside them has a body odor. And then sometimes they just need to talk, and we're there to support them. How do you handle that? What's the right way to handle that? And so I think it's just listening, creating a safe space, and helping them build your culture.
Great examples. And the anonymous part, I really like that staff input anonymous part. So, and I know that there's a lot of folks around the room right now, they're looking for those key examples. Jody, was there anything you wanted to add to that?
Sure, just very quickly, I think diversity is one thing, inclusion is completely different. And so we have to ensure we really truly understand what that means. If your organization is like ours, we also work with non-Indigenous allies. But there's a learning curve. So just because we're a First Nations or an Indigenous organization, we can't make the assumption that our Indigenous or our non-Indigenous colleagues and allies know or understand culture. This is still a huge learning curve, even for me as an Indigenous woman or as a First Nations woman. I'm still learning many cultures. So being inclusive and recognizing and acknowledging that there's other cultures in your workspace, I think is important. Continuing to learn and teach and coach is really important. I really like the idea of the cultural days. I think that's fantastic. We've implemented things at our strategic planning sessions, like using a talking stick. What does that mean? What's the sacredness of that? But explaining to our non-Indigenous colleagues why that's important.
I want to see, just coming off of that, but one of the things that my friend had reminded me of is, when our team was going through the cultural issues, was, have you sat them in circle? And I was thinking, that's such a good idea. Like, I should. And we have obviously some non-Indigenous and Indigenous folks. And when I said, okay, we're going to have circle, the Indigenous folks, it was just to see them feel that in their space. But then for them to sit around the table with non-Indigenous folks and around the circle, to show and to feel so good about uplifting those folks and showing them what is circle and what does it mean and how it's like to bring us together, because you're all in a circle and you can all make eye contact and you're there as one. That went a far way in our company. That went huge. And sometimes I think maybe we should just get everybody in circle every day.
Mm-hmm. Powerful examples of using Indigenous knowledge and ways and embedding Indigenous practices into our organizations is actually great holistically for our whole organizations, for everybody, not exclusively to Indigenous people. I certainly felt that a lot as the executive director for Maconseg Aboriginal Head Start, the way that we ran the program and included families in the programming and did other things differently than your typical child care center might do. It was like, this is leading, like everyone should be doing this. So and I think, Jody, to your point about including non-Indigenous allies, whether that's on our team, but also around the room, we have non-Indigenous employers here. We have Corporate Canada here. We have government here. And if you're looking at ways of improving your, diversity, equity, inclusion, one of the things that we work through at Nakanagis with some of our folks is looking at things a bit differently for the Indigenous employees that you're hiring to lead your liaison strategies. Something like, attending a conference like this or attending an Indigenous gathering that might not specifically seem like it has anything to do with their role, but it will have everything to do with the fact that they've now gathered in community, because day in and day out in a non-Indigenous mainstream organization, they might be feeling like one of many. And by coming to a gathering like this or another organization's gathering will go a long way in helping support their current day work. So we are coming to a close here. We will go back to Q&As before ending, but just wanted to end the questions back to the panelists with that we're currently seeking Indigenous talent, and in that, what are the strategies that we can employ to ensure that folks are aware of opportunities that are available to them in Indigenous-owned and led organizations? So how are we reaching those candidates?
Well, I'm up here and I'm going to tell you that we're hiring. FNFA, yes, we are hiring, but there are strategies, obviously, that we deploy depending on the role that we're hiring for. So we look to see what region are we hiring in, what are some of the newspapers that are leading. So if we want to hire somebody in Northwestern Ontario, we're going to look at Wawate, we're going to look at the Bulletin, we are going to look at Nation Talk, we are going to look at LinkedIn is huge right now. How many people check their LinkedIn on a daily basis? How many people see the jobs that are there?
All day, every day.
Amazing. Yes, this is a huge place. It's word of mouth. The Moccasin Telegraph is alive and it's strong. So I put it out to our networks as well. I find, and Jennifer, you may feel differently, if we post a job on Indeed, we're going to get 500 applicants and maybe 5 of them are actually relevant. So people are just throwing out their resumes to these things. We want really targeted and people that understand the role, understand the community. So it is important to understand where you're posting.
Jennifer.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. I think that networking is really important. We understand how hard it is for our clients, our First Nations, to recruit themselves, and so we want them to be aware of our positions, but we want to be clear that we're not trying to poach from them. So it's something that's really important to us, that we're not poaching from our clients. But if they're willing to share our advertisements and our postings, then we would love for that. One thing that we just introduced was an employee referral program, and it's incredible how many referrals we have gotten just since April 1st. And so, really tapping into your employees' networks, who do they know? We sign up for Canada Summer Jobs every year, and, we're grooming those individuals, those youths, to be our next employees. And so I think that it's really important that we're connecting with them as early as we can. We do exit interviews when our employees leave, and we really try to leave the door open for them to return. And we've actually had a number of employees actually return to us. Sometimes you need to go to do something different, to grab new skills, but we always want them to come back as well. So, don't forget those who have left your organization.
Yeah, so for us, we're obviously on our talent side, so the contractor side, our number one goal is to load them up with clients through our platform. And so we have over 300 Indigenous-owned businesses that are in our platform using the service. And so obviously I wouldn't be a good CEO if I didn't plug a little bit of it, but you could go to thevirtualgurus.com/VIP, and there's like a gift there for all of you. But you can actually go in there and you can select an Indigenous talent member to do your back office support, your administration, your marketing, your bookkeeping, everything. And you're only paying for the amount work. So it could be a 20 or 30-hour package a month. It doesn't matter. You can build a bunch of them and put a bunch of them in a package into there and work with you as well. So one of the things that we're doing is, because we have so much Indigenous businesses using the service now, we are going into Indigenous communities. So Tsuut'ina Reserve in Calgary is our first one. And we're working with ATCO. We've got the ATCO trailers there, and we're working with the Indigenous Career Services Department. And then they're bringing folks in, and we're teaching them and showing them, have computers set up into the trailers, and showing them how to work remotely through using our system. So then they can essentially just stay on their communities, and they can come into work in this career center, or they can work from home. And so right now, that's what we're doing. We're in our first reserve now, and then we're now moving into 3 other reserves that we're talking with. We're in the early stages of it, but that was one of the only ways that we could really collect and get Indigenous talent to serve our Indigenous businesses.
Wonderful. That's amazing. Yes, thank you. And thank you, everyone up here, for contributing to the discussion today. Before we close off, I want to look back across the room and just ask, are there any questions that you have specifically for the panelists here today? I see somebody that's going to the mic. Thank you.
Hi. Hello. Okay,
Hello.
it's on. Hi, my name's Cassandra Walters. I'm a founder. But I just wanted to share gratitude today, a little bit about how I became a founder. I was 25 years in the corporate space, and as I began my reconnection with my culture and my healing journey, I was terminated twice in 11 months. And so I founded my consultancies. It'll be 2 years on May 17th. And actually, I had reached out to Virtual Gurus. You were the first one I thought of, Bobbie. Victoria Lennox and I worked together on projects, and she shared your business with me. And it's my intention to grow my consultancies. I'm currently a sole proprietor, but to grow it in incorporation and to hire Indigenous consultants so that we can continue to do good work. And your organization has inspired me to have that access at the early stages. So I'm not there yet. I had cancer in the fall, and I'm doing very well, but it put things on pause for a while. So this has just been really inspiring to see you here today, and you've been in my thoughts, and I look forward to working with you and your team when the time comes. So thank you all for your future vision, for hiring as well, because it was that ejection from the corporate world that stopped me and said, okay, enough, I'm going to work for myself. There's not a space for me. So I want to create that space for others as well. And you inspire me, Bobbie, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see another question over here or comment. And that'll be the final question. I'll turn it back over to Carl at the end to wrap up. Yes, over here.
Hi there, Tyler McCabe at Louis Riel Capital Corporation. So a larger and larger part of our group of our employees are made up of millennials and Gen Zs, whereas our leadership, our executive, our board, our political overlords are typically 55 plus. So what I'm seeing is a very big generational divide in work and what priorities are as employees and as leaders and all that. And I'm wondering if there are any strategies, data, anything that I can use as somebody who's kind of in the middle and has been climbing up into a leadership position so that I can convince the people at the top of what should be a priority for the company when it comes to, you know, HR and all that kind of stuff. So what's out there for me to help me in that? I'm not going to call it a fight, but it's kind of a fight.
So it's a fight. So I'll look to the group to add some comments. I know some of the things that come to mind when I think about the digital divide or the age that happens, and there's so much benefit that comes from technology. And if we're in a digital world and we're working hybrid, we really do have to use tools better. I am sometimes surprised when I work with clients and I see that their HR strategies aren't supported by a smoother orientation, a smoother onboarding, and really leveraging what's available to us through technology. But anything specifically you want to add before we depart for the day?
That is a great question, and I think all of us are starting to run into these challenges, and it may be, you know, there's lots of different answers and suggestions. What I find with millennials is they are really great at setting boundaries and saying what they do want to do, but also what they don't want to do. Where, you know, some of the people 55 plus or you know, on their way out to retirement, that's not how we grew up. Well, not me, I'm not plus 55, I'm just gonna say that. But when we first started working, if we were asked to do something, we said, yes, absolutely, I'll get that done right away. And so when we get the response of, no, I have too much on my plate, sometimes I'm taken aback going, oh, wow. But I'm also learning to say, wow, they're really great at setting boundaries, because my issue is that sometimes I take too much on. And so leadership styles and management styles have changed dramatically. It's not the old, if you're not here at 8:01, you're going to be fired, and you have to get A, B, C, and D done by the end of the day, or you can't leave. That hard approach doesn't necessarily work with millennials. There has to be a differing. So trying to find out what's important to millennials versus Gen X, Gen Y, whatever it happens to be. That's going to be important to communicate and find that balance.
Glad you didn't say boomers.
Yes.
Want to add?
I'm probably gonna. They're probably gonna hate me for saying this, but all my executive leaders on my team are older than me. And so for me, I just, I remind them that the younger generations can be smart too. And, I think one of our things is we believe firmly in moving people up within the company regardless of their age. And we stand true to that. Actually, my assistant, who sadly had just essentially retired, and when she came to work for me as my full-time executive assistant, she's 61, and she was getting up there, and it was her time. And I was like, no, you can't yet. But for selfish reasons for me, that I just wanted to keep her because I needed her to keep me organized. But this is the thing: is ageism. Is how do you get rid of the ageism in any company, really, to understand that? But for me, I can obviously say, I'm the youngest executive leader at my company, and that kind of makes them be quiet, I guess. But.
Nice. And Jennifer, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, one of the things that we do is, we want to make sure that there's a lot of cross work going on. And so it might be either our senior leadership team meeting or one of our board meetings, and we'll actually have someone more junior on one of the other teams doing some presentations, so that there is that overlap. They're getting the opportunity to sit in on one of the senior leadership teams or one of the board meetings as well. We do a lot of internal promotions, and really think about, when you're succession planning, what are your employees going to need in order to get there? If you can grow your own leaders, you're already a step ahead.
Well, I appreciate you leaving that nugget with succession planning. That's more food for thought. And thank you all for contributing to the conversation today, and everyone for being here to take part. Miigwech.
What a tremendous panel. Let's give it up one more time. That was just awesome.